Hi, guys.
Just want to let you guys know that you're live right now.
Okay. I'm gonna mute. Ashley, I'm ready anytime.
All right, John.
Okay. We all set?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ways and Means Subcommittee meeting of June 15th, 2020. Purpose of this meeting is to give all of the councilors a look at what the mayor is submitting in the budget, and also giving us the opportunity, if we see something that we don't feel is necessary, to eliminate it from the budget. However, the Ways and Means Committee cannot add anything to the budget. We can eliminate what we feel is necessary, if that is the case. It also gives the general public out there a window of opportunity to see where their tax dollars are going, how they're being spent, for what purpose, and for what amount. And I think that's a good thing. So now we're going to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The members of the committee are as follows. Myself as chair, Councilor Jessica Janino, Councilor Joanne McKenna, Councilor Stephen Morabito, Councilor Visconti, and Councilor Zambuto. And I perhaps should have said Councilwoman on the first two because they are women.
Thank you.
Okay. The first item on the agenda, I believe the Director of Finance would like to say a few words. Is he here, Jessica?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon to you.
No,
How are you all?
good.
Excellent. Hi, Council. I did a brief overview of the 2021 operating budget. If you guys wouldn't mind giving me a few minutes to go through it. Hopefully it will set up the macro level version of the budget, and then we can get into the details. All right. This is the 2021 operating budget overview presented by Mayor Arrigo and myself doing the overview. So next page, please. So this year's 2001 operating budget is in total for the general fund, $179,422,767. That's comprised of city expenditure of 41.9 million, school expenditure of 94.1 million, and fixed costs between the school and the city combined of $43.4 million. Added into that would be the operating budget for the enterprise funds, which is the water and sewer enterprise fund, as well as the solid waste enterprise fund. Those total $30.3 million. And you're looking at a total operating budget of $209,721,616. Next slide, please. So without beleaguering a lot of what people already know, some of the key factors in this budget are basically the reorganization and some of the reductions that we've had to make throughout city government here. General government in particular has had some reductions in force, etc. We have managed to keep uniformed officers in at the current head count, so there were no reductions in force for public safety. However, there was one reduction in a administrative position at the police department. The public schools, Revere has built their budget based upon assumptions that both the schools and the city made on what we believe to be reasonable estimates for state aid with regard to Chapter 70, and that appropriation of $94 million is what the schools worked with, and they have their own section in this budget that they'll speak of, I believe, tomorrow or Wednesday. Public Works has had a large reorganization that hopefully will create some efficiencies and down in our force. We also had to cut some significant contract services from that department. Culture and Recreation, we were able to maintain staffing levels there with the hope that the residents have the access to programs and services once pandemic subsides and we can get back to living normal lives. So, next slide, please. So, as you know, the revenues that come in help us to expend the funds that we expend. So, this is a quick overview of our revenues. Biggest categories are the tax levy, which includes all the new growth in the city, local receipts, which are local excises, motor vehicle permits, fines, investment income, etc. State aid would be the cherry sheets that we receive from the state that but also a big portion of that is what they call unrestricted general government aid, also known as UGA. Other financing sources, this particular year, we are proposing that we use $1 million of our free cash to help offset any of the budget cuts that we've had to make due to revenue shortfalls, and enterprise fund revenue, which is the revenues that are derived from water and sewer and solid waste recycling operations. Next slide. So as far as the tax levy goes, our tax levy limit for fiscal year 2020, this particular year, is $90,539,665. We're able to add 2.5% to that per Mass General Law. That's your $2.26 million. And we are estimating that new development in the city will gain us an extra $2 million of tax levy. So total tax levy on this budget is $94.8 million. That new growth estimate is based upon estimates by our chief of assessing, based upon all the progress in the developments that are going on through the city. And that is the maximum we can raise in property taxes. So even if we wanted to spend 97 million in tax levy, we're not allowed to do it because it is not allowed by law. Next slide, please. All right, local receipts, the revenues received and collected that aren't reserved for special purposes. This has been a tricky year, so we are trying our best to say, well, how much do we think we're going to get in fiscal year 21 based upon the effects of the pandemic and the economic turn down. We have estimated that we will see about a 12.5% decrease from our 2020 estimated revenues due to the slowdown. That number may be more, but as you probably are aware, when we estimate our local receipts, we typically receive more than we estimate, and that's what allows us to have a decent amount of free cash certified. So 12.5 is off of our estimated numbers from 2020, which we thought were pretty realistic, more, not aggressive at all. However, we are finding ourselves hard pressed to hit our 2020 estimates due to the slowdown since March. So that's a pretty fluid situation, but we're maintaining a close eye on that, and we project some decreases going forward. Obviously, motor vehicle excise, we estimate at 5.6 million. We believe that the new cars may not be flying off the lot like they were in the past, so we brought that down about 400,000. Licenses and permits, we hope that the development is strong here in the city still, but we've ramped that down to 2 million. Excise taxes for rooms and meals, we've also decreased. Although the economy is opening up now, we're not quite sure how quickly everybody is to go out and spend the night in a hotel room or in a restaurant. So all of those key estimates there, we're down about 15 to 30%. Decrease to our local, unfortunately, doesn't allow us to fund the budget where we would hope to in the past. So therefore, you'll see some reductions in a lot of the spending across the board. Next slide, please. The third part of our local receipts that are a very significant portion is our state aid, our cherry sheet revenue, as it's called, because of the cherry color paper it used to come in on. Now we get it all digitally, so cherry sheet is an older term, but still used pretty much throughout the Commonwealth. When the governor came out with his budget in 2021, he had Chapter 70 at about $80 million, which included a full funding of the Student Opportunity Act. That happened right around the end of January. About a month and a half later, we got hit with the pandemic, and it threw everything into a tailspin. A lot of the conversation on the websites and on the memberships of the associations I'm part of have been throwing around decreases anywhere from 10 to 20 to 30% on this state aid. We had some meetings with Superintendent Kelly and Matt Cruz, the mayor, and myself, and we took an approach that we felt that number should be cut 10% off the governor's number. So we lowered our Chapter 70 money 10%. We also lowered our unrestricted general government aid 10%. So the primary aid from general government is the lottery money that comes in, but that is unrestricted local aid. The Chapter 70 money will go directly towards the schools. So the schools have a budget based upon the assumptions of this Chapter 70 money, and once we finally get some numbers that are actual sometime in the summer, we may have to go back to the council and either increase or decrease that budget, depending on how that shakes out. But we really think we took a middle of the road, reasonable estimate based upon all factors. So estimated revenue for the cherry sheet, 84.5 million. Next slide. As I stated, other financing sources, typically we don't use other financing sources to balance the budget. Sometimes throughout the year, we will have an appropriation to do some things, but we don't like to use one-time revenues to balance the budget. However, we're in extraordinary times here, and to avoid making deeper cuts than we've already had to make, we have proposed that we have a contingency vote for $1 million from our free cash in order to stabilize the budget and not have any further reductions in force. Again, if we have some positive numbers from local aid or our local receipts are trending much better than we anticipate, this vote may not need to take place. Usually, free cash votes have to be done by June 30th. However, the laws have changed recently to allow cities and towns to use their free cash into the next fiscal year due to the fact that many communities are having troubles even holding a town meeting or getting their legislative bodies together to vote a budget. So we decided right off the bat that we thought it would be best for us to come out with a budget, make our best estimates, and adjust it as needed. Again, we hope that we are in line with these figures. If not, we hope we're lower and that the increases in revenues would help us not only I'm ready for the next one, please. Enterprise fund revenues are the revenues that are generated from the operations of our water and sewer and our trash, our solid waste enterprise funds. We account for those separately. Those their free cash is certified separately. It's called retained earnings for some reason. Those revenues segregated into a fund, and we estimate those revenues based upon historical data and rates and such. So our two enterprise funds are water and sewer, which is our largest one, and solid waste, which is one that we created just recently to help better understand what it costs the city to actually run its solid waste operations. Next slide. Our revenue for 2021 is estimated at $27.8 million. Now, 25.8 of that would come from user fees, and for the third year in a row, the mayor would like to use $2 million from the retained earnings to keep these rates stable. We are currently in the process of working with the MWRA on some debt restructuring. That was one avenue that we tried to pursue to help keep costs down and see if we can defer or restructure debt. Well, MWRA has a few scenarios that we're bouncing back and forth and would allow us to restructure some debt to defer some of the payments and create some relief in fiscal year 2021. That process is not finalized yet, but to the extent that we're able to reduce the amount we need for debt service, that will then in turn allow us to use less retained earnings to stabilize these rates. So hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have a little more information on that and I can update you accordingly. But as this budget stands right now, $2 million of retained earnings is being contemplated to help relieve the burden of the user fees on the residents of the city. Next slide. So that's the revenue portion. Trash is about $250,000 in revenue we estimate. I'm sorry if I missed that, but all those revenues go to support the expenditures on the city side. So basically, the categories for spending are general government, which is all the public safety, public works, health and human services, culture, recreation, and all the departments that you typically used to see and operate in the city here, plus fixed costs, which are our employee benefits, debt service, property and casualty insurance, and pension obligation. And of course, there's Revere Public Schools, and then the cost to run the water and sewer enterprise and the solid waste recycling enterprise And state assessments are the assessments that the state levies upon us as part of their local aid. They give us money and then they take money back. The biggest assessments are usually charter school tuition, MBTA, and retired teachers' health insurance. And then other financing uses are just uses that fall outside of those categories. Next slide. These slides kind of follow your 5-year forecast. If anyone's wondering, they want to check these numbers against other numbers. These numbers come right from the 5-year forecast within the budget. But just as a quick snapshot summary, spending for general government, which is more or less your city hall operations, your election, city clerk, mayor's office, finance departments, planning, et cetera. That's $9 million expected to be spent on that. Public safety, police, fire, emergency call center, and parking department, $25.6 million. Public works department, $3.9 million. Health and human services, which is your board of health, your veterans, your council on aging, your commission on disabilities, et cetera, $1.9 million. And libraries and recreation, $1.34 million. Total government expenditures for fiscal year 21 proposed would be $41.9 million. Next slide. If anyone has a question, just pipe in. I'm trying to go through it quick. I know we got a lot of budgets.
Yeah, Rich, I have one question.
Sure.
I heard you mention Chapter 70 money. I didn't hear you. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I didn't hear you mention Chapter 90 money, which is crucial to the maintenance of our infrastructure throughout the city with regard to the state reducing that. Is there any word on that?
No word on that. And the reason why I didn't mention that, Counselor, is that Chapter 90 money typically comes in as a special revenue account through like an off ledger account. So like you said, they usually give us an indication of what we're going to get. I believe it's about 700 and some odd thousand this year. I don't know if there's a supplemental transportation bond bill. I can do some research on that. But usually when they get us that letter, we would set that up as a receivable, and that allows the city to begin their construction on those projects that are allowable under Chapter 90, which are the larger street jobs, not the small patch jobs, but more significant grind, total restructure, surfacing, et cetera, curb to curb stuff. But
the reason I brought that up is because I know in the past the mayor has been very generous each year, adding in an extra $1 million to our Chapter 90 money, so we could get a better hold on the infrastructure repairs. And I'm a little concerned over that.
Well, we did do that, Counselor. If you recall, when we did the capital budget, we appropriated $700,000 for the larger road work repairs, and we actually broke off $300,000 into a separate contract that was going to address all of the 311 calls that we had. So I know that there's a crew out there right now doing the smaller jobs, and I believe Mike Kessman and company will be getting ready to start the bigger projects this spring here.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so fixed costs, health insurance, $22.4 million.
So I want to interrupt for a second, if that's okay.
That's fun. So we were
Rich?
able to keep that at a
Rich?
zero increase.
Hi, Rich.
Yes.
Tony Z, I just want to interrupt.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Okay, it's Tony Z. I just wanted to kind of put out a point of information that the Chapter 90 money is status quo. There's been no changes to it at this point.
Excellent. Great news.
That's not a
to the fixed
guarantee or
costs.
anything. I'm just giving that as a point of information.
We heard you guarantee it right here on Zoom.
I have no authority to guarantee anything.
So yeah, well, we hope it is coming in as expected. but
Yeah.
okay, contributory pension, that is our assessment for our unfunded liability, 13.5 million. Cost of our debt service net is 4.8 million. That debt service is a little higher actually than 4.8 million, but we do have some accounts that allow us to use that money to reduce the debt service, and we have done so, and I can go into that further detail when we get to that budget. Medicare is estimated at 1.5 million. That's the FICA that everyone has out of their check, and the city has to match it. And then our property and casualty insurance is estimated at 1.1 million. That is going up because I don't know, insurance never seems to go down, but this year they're saying that all our buildings are undervalued and we have to increase the values, and we're having a little bit of a haggle about that. But right now it's estimated at 1.1 million. So total fixed cost 43.4 million for fiscal year 2021. Next slide, please. Rigo and myself sat down, we strategized on our best approach on coming up with a budget, and we decided that we would take a conservative approach and lower the governor's number by about 10%. That brought our state aid for Chapter 70 down from 80 million to about 72 million. When you do the ins and outs of the shared expenses and the Schedule 19, we have an appropriation of 94.1 million that will keep us within net school spending as long as our assumptions are correct. So our budget, just like every other year, is in compliance with the DESI's net school spending. And if we get not let's say we estimate, we'll certainly be coming back to the council to get a supplemental to make sure that we're in compliance with the DESI's net school spending minimum. If God forbid it comes in even less than we cut it, we may be coming back to reduce that number. But as it stands right now, we think we have a pretty good middle of the road number that we hope won't vary too much. I mean, we hope it goes up, obviously, but we don't think it. We're hoping it doesn't get worse than that. Next slide, please. Water and sewer enterprise fund, about 1.5 million of salary, about 1.5 in expenses. And as you can see, the enterprise fund is primarily driven by our fixed costs. That's debt service for all of the pipes and pumps and infrastructure we've got going on, whether it's through the consent decree or water main improvements, new meters, lead service replacements, drainage issues, etc. That comes to 5.7 million. And then our assessments from the MWRA equal 5.6 and 11.2 million respectively. So again, cost of us running the water and sewer department is 25.5 million. The delta between the revenues we have coming in expected and the expenditures that are listed here would be those indirect costs that we're allowed to charge to the water and sewer department. That would be for things such as shared services, debt service on buildings that are shared, or my time, treasurer's time, collector's time, anybody who's involved on the general fund side with water and sewer operations, we can apportion those indirect costs. So that's the delta between the revenue and the expenses you see there. Next slide, please. Now, solid waste, we got about 357,000 of salary. We don't have many expenses per se, other than the contracted services, which are the cost of collecting the trash and the recycling and the disposal of both trash and recycling. It's no secret that the cost of the single stream recycling has gone through the roof. I think we have a 100% increase in our budget for that line item. I'm sure you could talk with Paul and those folks about the ramification, what we can do about that. I know we did get a grant again to try to help promote making sure recycling is clean, because we get fined every time we bring dirty loads up there. But it's really something that everybody's grappling with. It actually costs us more money to get rid of recycling than trash, which is not the way it is. It should be. I don't know. We used to get $20-30 a ton for that single stream recycling, but right now we're getting croaked. So our estimated contract services is upwards of $4 million for the next year, 22, you'll see them be cut in half, and then that will go away going forward. And that leaves us with $4.7 million of expenses for the enterprise fund. Next slide. Like I said earlier, the cherry sheet, they give it and they take it away. These are the costs that, every city is unique. Some cities have a lot of MBTA service in their city, some don't. Some have a lot of charter school out tuition, some don't. The numbers here for 2021 reflect what we estimate would be our cherry sheet charges. And most of those come directly from the governor's budget. We did reduce the charter school tuition a little bit with the idea that if they're going to cut our state aid by $8 million, then we don't expect them to charge us full freight on the tuition out. So we hedged that back a little, but every other number there comes directly from the governor's first budget that came out in January.
Excuse me,
slide.
Mr. Biscay. Excuse
Sure.
me.
Yes.
I understand there may be some citizens that would like to ask questions after your presentation, and I just want to advise everyone that the members of the committee will have the first opportunity. Other city councils will have the second opportunity. The council president, if he is available, also is a member of the committee by virtue of the fact that he is the council president. And after that, any citizens that would like to ask questions, certainly we'll have an opportunity to do so. I'd like to just caution everyone that we have a lot on the agenda tonight. This is going to be a long and deliberate process, and I'd like to see it move along as smoothly as possible this evening. Thank you. Madam Clerk, you heard me, sure?
So that I think I went through that slide. Next slide. All right. So basically, that was a quick snapshot of the revenues in, expenses out. It's a balanced budget. Again, $1 million of free cash being proposed as a contingency vote if local aid and local receipts are coming as budgeted. We hope that they're higher. We hope that, I think most of you know this, but I'll say it anyway. A lot of this CARES funds, a lot of these federal dollars that are being made available to the cities and towns, they're very helpful. They're paying for a lot of stuff that we need and didn't budget for, but they're not allowing us to take that money and replace losses in revenue. So when we have no meals tax, no permitting, no rooms tax coming in, we can't just plug that in as a revenue offset. So it is helpful to equip the city to make sure that we're safe and have food banks and all that stuff, but I cannot just plug that in for revenue. So that doesn't help me too much when creating the budget, but again, things change daily. So if something comes up and we're allowed to supplement revenues with this money, especially where the government shut us down and we're not able to collect these dollars that we otherwise count on, we'll see how that shakes out. But all the collective bargaining agreements have been settled, and so we don't have any hanging liabilities out there for contract settlement, which is helpful. Like I said, most of these numbers come right from the 5-year forecast in your budget book. I put a narrative together that gives a little more detail on this summary that we presented. This budget is presented in the form of the GFOA's Distinguished Budget Award. You all are familiar with this. We've gotten it 7 straight years, but every year we try to build upon it and add new stuff and just make this document as robust and informative as possible. And again, I encourage everybody to let me know if you'd like to see something in there that's that would be helpful. If you'd like to see something in a different format, we're always trying to make it a better document. I do apologize. It's a couple of sections of the capital and debt I still owe the council, and I will get that to you, but being short-staffed here a little bit, we're just trying to make sure we get you the pertinent information to vote this budget. So again, my apologies for that, but you will certainly get a complete document before next Monday. And then happy to answer any questions.
Any councils out there that have their hands raised that they would like to communicate with Mr. Desai regarding his presentation?
John, Counselor?
Yes. Raise your hand. Raise your hand, please.
Counselor, if I may?
Go ahead.
First, I want to thank Rich and his finance team for getting us this budget on a timely manner, especially under the circumstances being in the middle of a pandemic and the fact of being short-staffed. I know it's been challenging, and I want to thank you for that. My question for you, Rich, is really directed on the revenue side. And understanding you correctly, I know we, like other surrounding communities, are still waiting for that number from the state, and is putting us in a position to just estimate as best as possible. What happens if we're short, and what's the game plan for that? You know, based on the fact that right now we're voting on something that we see these numbers may be short, and they may be, hopefully they're not, you know, but we may be short on our numbers. What's the game plan with that, if that's the case?
Well, I would say that there's two parts of that, Council. If it's shortages in the Chapter 70 money that is dedicated to the schools would have to make those adjustments on part of their budget. And if those adjustments require decreases, we would have to come before the council and decrease their budget accordingly. So that part would be handled through the schools, and then would flow through to the you could either do the same, come in and reduce budgets either further, or we have pretty healthy stabilization accounts for both the general fund and the water sewer enterprise fund. I think we have $8.5 million of stabilization money for general fund, so we can always further supplement the operating budget with the hope that we're just in a blip here. You know, if this was something that was in perpetuity, I wouldn't want to use one-time revenues every year. But if we think we just got to get through a one-year hiccup, then I would propose using some of our rainy day fund, because I would say that it's raining, I guess. But that would be the two options: either cut further or use some money to supplement it and keep it at the amounts that we appropriate.
If I can just follow up with one other question on the receipt side, looking at the other department revenue side, there's a reduction of, I think it's $50,000 for 2021. Can you explain what actually that revenue?
Well, that's basically just revenues that come in from all the departments that aren't classified here. It's any department that has any kind of fee that doesn't tie into one of these. It kind of a catch-all there. I can break it down and get you a little more detail on that, but we didn't think there was going to be too much of a decrease there.
Okay. All right. Great.
But I'll get you detail on that.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
John,
Hello.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, John. Rich, I have two questions, and I might you might have already answered this, or you might not know. First of all, I want to say thank you for putting this presentation on. And I know it must have been difficult in the last few months that you had to come up with another budget. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for your hard work.
You're welcome.
One of the questions I have is, I know the city is offering early retirement for people. Do you know if the school,
Yes.
the Revere Public Schools is doing the same to, get the salary down, the budget down? You know that?
I don't know that they,
You froze.
most of those had to go through the respect union, so they could be being contemplated between the unions, even though it may seem like something pretty basic. You still have to run it by the union, make sure they have buy-in. But we had some decent success here on the city side and had some people retire, which was helpful because that was that many less bodies that we would have to reduce otherwise. So
Right.
I think the fire department is also contemplating it now as well. So that it's making its way through the unions. I cannot follow up with you on that though.
Thank you. And one other question, are we getting any federal dollars? I know you said it was questionable, but for the Quality Inn that we,
Yeah, we expect to be 100% reimbursed for that. There's two revenue sources that will help pay for that. There's the FEMA, which is estimated to be 75% of all eligible costs. That hotel definitely being an eligible cost. The 25% is reimbursable through the CARES funds that come in through the federal government as a pass through to the state. And we've actually just applied for, I believe, $800,000 of those to be reimbursed. As you recall, we appropriated $1 million to fight the pandemic.
right,
And now what we're trying to do is get those costs back off of that appropriation and paid through the CARES money, so that with the hope that we can actually put that $1 million back in our stabilization account.
and does Chelsea and Lynn also qualify for that money?
Every city and town qualifies for the CARES money. It's all it's a pass through from the federal government to the states, and it's being administered by the Department of Revenue. So there's a website you go on, and there's certain categories that they have you break it down into, and in some cases they only let you apply for 25% because they know you're going to be eligible for 75%.
You frozen.
DOR. So we hope to have that money in by June 30th so that we can shift those costs over to that before we close the books.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, are there any other members of the committee or councilors that have any questions regarding Mr. Biscay's comments?
No, Counselor Powers, there's no other committee members or counselors with their hand raised.
Okay, I just have one statement, and I'll entertain any residents that want to speak, on a, as long as we don't get too lengthy, because we have an entire portion of the budget we have to do tonight, and I want to make sure we get through that. And then any other, if there's anyone out there that wants to make recommendations for cuts, they can certainly do that on the meeting of the 22nd, which is, next week. So I'm going to just make a statement now, and then we'll start with the budget after, unless there's someone out there that wants to make a comment with regard to ask a question of Mr. Biscay, and I'm sure Rich will stick around for 5 or 10 minutes. I know he has a lot to do, but
I'll be here for a whole meeting, Council. I'll be here for the whole meeting.
great.
All right.
That's great. You're entirely welcome, sir. Your expertise and your efficiency is, well noted on this council. I just want to make a comment. We mentioned the $300,000 that Mayor Arrigo has put out there for allocated towards sidewalks and sidewalk repairs. And I want to say that I want to compliment him for that. He's done an excellent job year after year, making sure that those monies were available so that sidewalks had been gone on for a long period of time and not addressed properly, that they are being addressed now. And if people will just be patient, we will get to them as soon as possible, and hopefully that'll be very soon. Thank you. Ashley, are there any comments out there from any people that want to speak?
Yes, Counselor, there's Eric Lampendecchio. I'm going to allow him to speak right now.
Yes, go ahead, please.
He's been unmuted.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councilors. Eric Lampendecchio, 43 Tapley Avenue. Mr. Risquet, thank you as always for putting together a very straightforward and simple presentation on a very complex and evolving situation. I have a list of questions for you. I'm going to start at the top. In your presentation, you spoke to the consolidation of multiple departments. Are there any current consolidations that are under proposal, or any examples that you can share with the council and the residents at this time?
Sure. The mayor's proposed a structure of trying to create an executive cabinet, I guess, chiefs, so to speak. And so you'll see that we have a chief of health and human services, which is going to consolidate all the efforts of the health and human services department, which would be our elder affairs, veterans, the health department, the SUDI, and Commission on Disability. So as opposed to the mayor having 30 people report to him, he's trying to make it a little more streamlined and have chiefs report up to him. So that's one of them. We also have some reorganization in the DPW where Don Cheramel has been made the chief of infrastructure and public works. And we have departments of engineering and water and sewer, trash enterprise, and public works reporting up through that. And in the budget, and I can certainly get your copy, we have some organization charts that we can send you. My position as finance director, I think chief financial officer, so to speak, I'll be overseeing all the departments that typically my operation has, but parking will also fall under my umbrella. So those are a couple of them. We've and then just within certain departments, we've had some changes, and we've had some reductions in force that kind of force some people to do double duty and just become more efficient, shared clerks and such. So, but that's probably the most generic way I guess I can describe it with the time allowed.
No worries. That all sounds like very good org structure changes for hierarchy purposes. My next question is with regards to growth, because obviously growth appears to make up a large portion of the budget. Is there any current plans for site, maybe Council Powers, you might even be able to answer that question, in terms of growth for the next fiscal year? I mean, it looks like we need some growth revenue at this time, and I know that's a large empty lot. Does the city have anything under works that might help us out financially over the next year or two?
With regard to where?
To Wonderland? The former
Oh, I'm
dog.
sorry, I missed that part. Yeah, I'll defer that to, that might be a question that Bob O'Brien might be able to elaborate a little bit on. I think he's on the agenda for tonight. But I don't have any particular, or even Dana or the assessor might be able to tell you some stuff on that. But I don't have too many particulars on the actual prospective purchases or developments over there. So.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I can answer part of the question. I know that that building, the clubhouse and the grandstand and some of the outbuildings were standing there for several years, and only because there was no sale for the land. So I took it upon myself to meet with the DEP in Wilmington. As a matter of fact, Bob O'Brien came along with me, and we were able to negotiate an agreement where the destruction of those buildings would take place within 6 months. And it did. And I thought that was a way to make it more attractive to potential developers that might be driving by there or coming into our city or are looking around for property that was developable. I think it's an excellent site. It's 3 miles from Logan Airport, 5 miles from downtown Boston. It's serviced by the Blue Line, MBTA. I've had conversations with the state with regard to making the commuter stop there, and I think that's a great thing. It'll take traffic off of 1A and 107 that's coming into the city. And also, I spoke with the fire chief.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. You don't need to sell me on the property. I know it's an uncut gem in the city of Revere. I just was curious. I mean, it's been an empty lot for a couple of years now. We're looking like we need to enter a time where we need some growth and development to help.
I think it'd be a great way to promote, public safety in the city. I think it's long overdue, and it's something that we're working on. So as far as development, I'm going to leave that to Bob O'Brien. He heads that department, and he knows exactly what he's looking for, what I'm looking for, what the mayor is looking for, and what should happen, I would hope, in the very near future. Bob, are you there? I don't know if you're there.
Yes, I am, Counselor. There has been some progress on Wonderland, but nothing significant to report at the moment. We are working with the current owners of the property on the rezoning of Wonderland, a process similar to what we underwent for Suffolk Downs. The entire process of development has been somewhat slowed by the COVID emergency in recent weeks. So some initial momentum has probably been delayed. So we continue to work on it. It is a very attractive site. It is one of the opportunity zones within Revere. The coming of Amazon to the adjacent property is helpful, and we will continue, as Councilor Powers indicated, to work on the new commuter rail stop there, which will be very helpful as well. But there is nothing yet to announce other than continuing attention to that very significant potential development project.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to derail the meeting. I want to go back to Mr. Viscay's presentation. You said that the city's going to add the maximum 2.5% to the total tax levy. I guess my first question is, do we always need to add this 2.5%, especially at a time where not only is the city hurting financially, but our residents, unemployment's at record highs, turn to the additional tax burden that's going to be put on the residents to cover this additional 2.5%, given that most other revenue streams, we're looking at projected shortfalls between at least 15 to 30%. We don't know that it's going to be 15 to 30%. This again is a projection. Do we always need to increase 2.5%?
I guess that's a relative question, whether we need to or not. I think if the administration wants to provide goods and services and have the means to do so, they choose to use that as one option. But the 2.5% isn't something that we necessarily just take. It's automatic. So our levy limit is 90 million, whatever it was. We're not required to tax to the levy limit. I mean, we could tax 75, 80 million if we wanted to, but again, with state aid down, 9, 10 million and local receipts down 2 million, I'm not sure if we want to decrease property taxes by 3 million, because again, really what comes of that is less cops and less firefighters and less school teachers and less services. So not to speak for the mayor, but I guess I will, because it says in my budget. But yeah, we have and probably will tax to the levy limit until such time where the growth is so extraordinary that we could leave capacity. I mean, it's certainly not something that we love to do, but we're at the levy limit as it is. So the 2.5% and the new growth usually allow us to raise taxes around 3%, 3.5%, but that's not always on one resident or one condominium. It all depends on the valuation of condos and versus industrial property versus commercial property. But I think you find it hard pressed to find a community that is actually taxing less. I know it's great to say, honestly, but it's really hard to keep up with the cost of doing business without kind of progressing those taxes as allowable by Mass General Law. So I think the short answer is we're not looking to go lower than what we're allowed to on property taxes.
No, I hear you. I just seeing those growth numbers, millions of dollars in revenue and growth, and then seeing the tax levy still rise. It's a little frustrating to see as a resident.
Oh yeah, I pay him too. I will say this just briefly while we're on it, but I think what we're really hoping in the long term is to have all of these developments, especially the Wonderland and the Suffolk developments, create this new growth that allows us to actually afford to make the payments on a new high school. So if we do create capacity, it's going to be capacity to make sure that when we get hit with $4, $5, $6 million a year debt payments on a new high school, that we're actually able to do it. So there will be some good coming of the new growth. I don't know if it'll be in the form of a tax reduction, so to speak, but definitely allows us to build a state-of-the-art high school and such. So,
Okay. My next question is for you directly as well. How did you land at that 15 to 30% projection of lower estimates for receipts? What's to say it's not going to be 30 to 50? I would think that whatever the unemployment rate is directly for the city would probably correlate. So I don't know how you guys landed.
I mean, I looked at the historical averages. I took a 3-year average of prior receipts and I estimated that against a baseline reduction on my estimate. So you got to remember now, 2020, we're still in it now. So, and we're still getting revenue. So it's even looking at my estimate for 2020, it's hard to build an estimate off of that because it's not complete for 2021. So I went back 3, 4, 5 years and did some 3-year and 5-year estimates and then built from there what I thought was reasonable. I mean, certain receipts are gone, like giving out fines and parking meter receipts and stuff like that. We'll never recover it. But in respects to like motor vehicle excise, I think that stuff will catch up. I don't know if it's going to take a year or 6 months or 2 years, but I guess there's some science to it, but there's also just some practicality to it. And, I've lived through this. I'm that old now. I don't like to admit it, but I've actually lived through a couple of these recessions and these 9C cuts. And so I think I got a decent handle on at least estimating it. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but it was just polling a lot of the people at the state, my DOR friends, people who work in similar cities and towns, and just kind of looking at the numbers and trying to flush it out and do the best possible guesstimate.
Okay. Speaking of money coming in and money going out, you mentioned you called them the UGGA money.
Yes.
Yes.
An increase in those funds if our census showed an increase in population this year, or would we not expect to see any funds this year? We'd only see them in 2021 moving forward.
I think it's just formula driven, Counselor. It's the most of it is the lottery and the lottery money. Actually, when you spend lottery money, it comes back to the cities and towns. So they used to have a line for lottery and another line for other unrestricted aid, and they combined it into one. But the lion's share of that is lottery. So kind of like anything else, if the lottery sales go down, then you can see our revenues go down as well. So again, just trying to be reasonable on the estimates. I hate to be too conservative and force people to lose their jobs. I hate to be too aggressive and come back here with egg on my face. So we tried our best to keep it middle of the road.
Rich, if I may interrupt for a second, correct me if I'm wrong. I think our surrounding communities, like you said, are making similar cuts between the 10 to 15% mark. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm sorry, I got a little
I said our surrounding communities, our surrounding communities. I know you have friends in our surrounding communities. They're making, when they're doing the budget, they're in the same position as us. I assume they're making the similar cut between 10 to 15%.
Yeah, that's about what I'm hearing from everybody. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
About 10, 15%. And again, some people have different, Salem has a lot more, meals tax and rooms tax, and they have the marijuana tax to deal with.
Yep.
Some cities have less hotels, some have more. So it's not always an exact science, but as far as that local aid from the state goes, everyone's around that 10, 15% number.
Agreed. Thank you.
Just a few more questions for you, Rich. I'm sorry to keep you. You mentioned a new high school. Is there any update on that?
Right now, we were invited into feasibility study. We've appropriated the money to do so. And I think our next thing is to put together, I believe, an RFQ for project managers. So I think the next deadline we have is sometime in mid-September on that, but it's progressing along.
Okay, and my last question for now is fines on recycling. You mentioned that the city has been incurring fines on recycling. I was just curious if you had a dollar figure for that, and if so, is the city currently on initiative to better educate the residents on how to properly recycle?
Yeah, we when we take a load up to the recycle up on top of Route 1 there, Casella, if it has stuff in there that doesn't belong, I think they charge us $110 a ton.
Wow.
We get charged about $72 a ton for regular trash. So yeah, we got a $40,000 grant last year. We got another $40,000 grant this year. We did change the trash ordinances to kind of tie into the new barrels and some of the enforcement. I guess people have different philosophies on how to best control this. It's hard to go out there and find people or go through their trash. People come out and say, "What the hell are you doing?" But we got the one barrel per family limit to help try to control the solid waste going into the wheelabrator. And I'm afraid that maybe what's happening is more people are using their recycle bins and they may not recycle it as properly. So we're getting double whammy because it costs us more and we're getting fined. So I don't have a great answer. I just think we got to be more diligent about educating, and we may have to levy some fines and hit people in the pocket so they can do it the right way. But even that's not very popular. Even pushing a barrel back on someone's property, if their recycling is not proper, then we get calls, "What the hell are you doing?" So it's tricky. It's a service that touches every single resident in the city. So it's very complicated and tough. And I would leave that to maybe Paul Genzio and his crew to discuss it a little further. But it's tough. You don't know whether to hit them with the Ball-Peen hammer or the velvet hammer or what. But all I do know is we're really paying through the nose for it.
Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Sure.
Ashley?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Yeah, if there are no other residents that would like to have some questions answered, I'd like to go on with the meeting and get into the budget.
Sure, no other residents have their hand raised, so you can move on to the
And how about
agenda.
any counselors that may have come in at a later moment? Any
I'm not
counselors?
showing any hands raised, Counselor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to start the general government portion of the FY 2021 budget. And the first department happens to be the mayor's office. Okay, and I'm looking at I don't see any changes in the salaries. The Volk School representative, I see that here. Okay, the Northeast Vocational School, that's $1,980,000. And payroll expenses, 18,000. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Chairman Powers,
Yes, go ahead.
I just have, we're going to start off with just the mayor's office budget. And I assume, Rich, you're going to speak on his behalf, I take it?
Yes.
Correct? Okay, great. If you're looking at if I can direct you to the budget where the home care expense.
Yes.
It looks as though there was $45,000 that was budgeted for last year, as well as requested for this year. Can you explain what that is? It doesn't look like it was agreed upon in the mayor's budget, so it was taken out of the mayor's budget here. What exactly is that, if you can?
Yeah,
help in that?
I don't know the history of why it ended up there, but since I've been in the city, that was an assessment for Mystic Valley Elder Services, which is a function of Council on Aging Elder Affairs. So we just we put that in the Elder Affairs budget just to have the expenses lined up more properly. So so it's not a decrease per se. It's just we moved that into a budget that we thought it was more appropriate.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Any residents with any questions?
Could I do a point of information?
State your point, Councilor McKenna.
If we're addressing a certain budget, can we give also the page number?
I will do that.
Thank you.
That happens to be on page 8.
8,
Thank you.
2-8.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I was probably remiss in mentioning, anyone that has any questions about anything and is anticipating making any cuts in the budget for any particular reason, I would suggest that they jot those down. We're going to be meeting on the 22nd when we'll finally vote on the budget, and those cuts can be made then if there's an appetite for that on the city council. So that'll help us move along a little faster in our deliberations here. Okay, everybody understand that?
Sure, thank you, Councilman. Chairman.
Now, the next department we're coming to is Human Resources. I'm looking at that right now. There is a slight increase in the salary of the director. Is the director here this evening? I can't see who's in the audience or on Zoom, but
Yes, Mr. Viorella was just promoted as a panelist. He can unmute himself.
oh, okay. Mr. Viorella?
If it helps, Counselor, I will just briefly let you know that as part of working with the Metro North Regional Emergency Communication Center, they are lacking a human resource department. So they were looking to hire a consultant or their own HR person. And the board had recommended that maybe we share services with the city here to help with the HR of the rec center, being that we're 78% of it anyway, and they have the same unions that both that the city has for Unit A, Unit B, and it was voted that John would assist in the HR duties down there for an additional amount of money of $9,000 that's being paid from their budget and their account. So the lion's share of his increases for additional duties that have to do with the human resources of the call center down there. So if that helps.
So it's not costing us anything, am I correct?
No, it comes out of their budget, and so it's a net. It's a 9,000 in and out, and it doesn't increase our budget at all.
Okay. Now, I'm looking at the page 2, section 2, page 14. And I see a lot of requests here for employee training, rentals and leases, office supplies, other expenses. That's recruitment and new equipment and outside legal services. Last year, The amount was $25,000 outside legal services. This year, they're requesting $100,000. Can you answer to that, or Mr. Fiscal?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead, I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Okay. So just a little in the way of sort of past history. Traditionally, the outside legal services budget, in years past was about $250,000.
Okay,
We lowered that dramatically through a combination of things, just, better relations with the unions overall, sort of more timely negotiations when it comes to contracts and things like that. Last year, we were able to reduce it significantly because we had sort of done all the work. So all the contracts were settled. There really wasn't a lot that needed to be done in terms of union negotiation. And this year, we have the opposite. All of our contracts will be coming up to be renewed in fiscal year 22. So we want to get started in fiscal year 21, so we don't run into a situation whereby, we're doing things late, like, they had kind of been done in the past. So we want to get a head start on the process this year. This budget for outside legal services reflects that. We're also going to be taking a look at the PEC agreement, which is the agreement between the city and all of the unions that deals with healthcare. That agreement expired in 2014. So, we need to take another look at that. So it's going to be a very busy year in terms of union negotiation, and that's why the budget reflects that. But that's still an extremely conservative number for us to work with.
I can see that. Even with that said, the mayor is still reduced it by $53,000. If you're looking at page 2, page 14, section 2. Okay, I think you had requested 127, and we're down to 127.
There we go. Sorry about that.
It's a reduction of $53,000.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the director?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, John, for this, for the budget, obviously. And I want to direct your attention to the part-time salaries, which have increased from 2,040, I think it's almost about 80%, and from last year to this year being 25,000. Is there a reason for the significant increase in part-time others?
I'm trying to find
Okay,
We're still on human resources.
that's where I'm at,
Okay.
Chairman.
Council, I can help answer that question if I may. Again, as part of trying to reorganize the budget and put expenses in the proper areas, historically, we've had some of the city youth that work through the recreation department. They have oftentimes given departments in the city help in the summer and employment, and most of those jobs ended up in DPW or auditing or affecting, et cetera. So as opposed to cannibalizing that budget in the recreation department, we felt that the employees that would be hired through the city department should be administered through the HR department. So we just kind of shifted some of those costs over there. Again, just trying our best to line up the expenses with the proper department. Okay.
And just so I'm understanding correctly, regarding that budgeting for what is it, Northeast Metro? Is it
Yeah, that's the 911 call center.
The 911 call center. You said that money, that additional funds are going to be coming from who now? What is it? Other cities that are going to be coming in to cover the cost for him, John, being the HR person for that department?
Well,
is it costing the city anything for that increase is what I'm asking.
Well, the call center right now consists of 2 communities in Revere and Winthrop. I
Okay.
believe right now there's a third being contemplated coming in, which is Saugus, and possibly a fourth, but right now it's a cost share between two cities. So in a sense, they have their own government, they have their own operating, but the cities of Winthrop, well, town of Winthrop, city of Revere, pay into the assessment of that. And in that respect, I guess it's a bit of a circular thing, but the cost savings of using John was much cheaper than hiring either a third party consultant or just bringing someone on full time. Because like we said, we have the same unions, we're following the same guidelines, et cetera. So more or less it's a cost savings in that Winthrop paying 22% of that, we pay 78% of that.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Anyone else?
Eric Lampedecchio, 43 Tapley Avenue. Just a question for Mr. Viarella in regards to salaries. There was a comment earlier that salaries are not decreasing, which is great to see for the employees of the city. I was curious, does the city use any kind of compensation study or a compensation survey to land at a median point for salaries across the board?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, we have we periodically do go out and do sort of an assessment of what we pay for certain positions versus what other municipalities in the area what they pay, and you know what we found is, of course, there's variances across the board, right? In some situations, you know, we're paying a little more. In some situations, we're paying a little less. But by and large, we're on target with other communities that have a similar size and similar budget. You know, and in terms of the increases themselves, those are negotiated through the union. So, you know, that's by union contract that we pay those rates.
Any other questions?
I think that ought to do it for this one. Unless anybody.
Any other questions for anyone? Hello? Ashley?
No, John, no one else has their hand raised.
Yes, I can't
One.
see those hands on my screen.
Nope,
That's
I'm
it.
watching them for you. There was no other residents with their hands raised.
Thank you. Okay. Chief Financial Officer, Auditor, and a Budget. Okay, that's where the auditor and the collected treasurer were combined.
Chairman,
Well-
Chairman, I think you missed a department.
What did I miss?
I believe it's innovation, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
If you're going in order, yes.
Okay.
If I may, real quick before you start, I just wanted to give all the councils a heads up that there was a couple of emails that went out. Ashley sent one, and then I just sent one. They're updates for your budget book, but the one that Ashley sent has some updated salary spreadsheets.
Yep.
I think my budget will be the first one that actually would refer to the updated one. The bottom line didn't change, but just some numbers that I wanted to make sure were correct. So I apologize for that, but in case anyone has access and wants to look, there's a couple of updated salary spreadsheets that we may be contemplating tonight. So just to complicate it even more for everybody. No, I just try to get everyone the right information. So my apologies.
So the next one is for Bob O'Brien.
It's
No, it's innovation data management. It's,
Innovation Data Management.
Ruben should be online, I hope.
Is he?
I am here, yes. This is Ruben.
Ruben, good evening.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening.
Okay. How's everything in 311?
It's been pretty busy. It has
Yeah.
been, as I'm sure you have all heard and all know, the last 3 months in particular, we've had doubling and in some days even tripling of calls. The 311 team has really stepped up in a really huge way during COVID. We put a lot on them, and in every moment they meet and exceeded expectations, and I'm really proud of those guys and really appreciative. And the city couldn't have had a successful response we've had so far to this pandemic without that team. So really glad that we have those guys on board. The team, great team.
I had a good comment with regard to your department, somebody that had called in on, I think it was 38 Bateman Avenue for a sidewalk repair, and it got done. And that's a good thing.
I'd love to hear that. I'd
I
love to hear.
think the 311 system is working. We now have a record of everything that is going on in the city with regard to DPW requests, whether they be water, sewer, sidewalks, or whatever they might be. And that's a good thing. I want to compliment the mayor on that, because this was his program and he did a great job putting it into operation. Ruben, I'm going with the salaries now, okay?
Yep.
The first one is Chief Innovation Officer. Okay, is that a decrease
No, that's not a decrease.
from the
No.
department request? There's $100,000 base, and then 20,000 of the salary, and then the salary and source is 10, and okay, so it comes out to the 120. Okay, and who is the 311 director now?
That will be Nick Romano will be taking over that role.
Okay. And yeah, I know he's been working up there during the crisis. He's been up there. I've called several times myself, and he's always there picking up the phone.
He's been a terrific addition to the team. He's been
He does a
really
great job.
tremendous.
He does a great job.
Just tremendous.
And assistant to director, that's who?
That's Randall Mondestin.
Okay. And call center representative, that's the young lady that answers the phone up there?
Angelica Cordona Ramirez, yes.
Yeah, she does a great job also. They all do, really. I mean, it's a tough thing to deal with when you're getting calls every day about, people have things they need to get done. And some people don't understand that it does take a little time to do them, but we get them done eventually.
100%.
And,
Mr.
go ahead, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ruben, for being here. I kind of want to dive right into the personnel salary line item, because it's probably one that sticks out quite a bit, to be honest with you. Department is showing probably the largest increase, okay, in personnel salary throughout all departments. I think we're at a 55% increase regarding your department, okay, with no new FTEs. And I'm trying to, if you can provide some clarity on, how we can justify these salary raises during this pandemic. As Mr. Viscay said, we are in some unforeseen times. I think it makes it difficult to take a look at these pay increases and try justifying that. So I just need some input from you, along with, if I may, the overtime budget has increased quite a bit as well. Last year, I think your overtime budget was a $3,000 in comparison to this year, where there's $33,000 increase. Can we get some clarity on that, please?
Sure. Where would you like me to start, sir?
You start why don't we start with your salary?
Okay. So the stipend that is being provided to me is being provided because I've had basically a 50% increase in my workload since I've taken on the COVID stuff. So I work very closely with Kim and the whole COVID team to provide all kinds of operational support across the board. So I've been basically haven't had a day off since March because I've had such a huge increase, and I'm working pretty extensively. And we know at this point that COVID isn't going away, right? We know that we've had some reduction, and that's a huge, huge relief to see the reduction we've had. But you know, we can look around the world and around the country to see the increases are coming back, unfortunately, and we're going to have to be continuing to be prepared and continuing to do the work that we've been doing for the last 3 months, potentially for the next 18 months, to get through this pandemic before we have a vaccine that is fully tested and in place. So I think that is the reason for the stipend, and that's where that piece comes from. As you can see, I've been my title has changed from Director of Innovation and Data Management to Chief Innovation Officer, and that is part of my joining the cabinet with the additional responsibilities that come with that.
And let me say, Ruben, I understand that your work during this pandemic has not gone unnoted. Unfortunately, my concern is, you know, there are a lot of directors and department heads that have worked very, you know, worked quite a bit during this time as well. And what it does is it makes it hard to justify from a council standpoint when other department heads are looking at this budget saying, okay, I've done quite a bit of work as well and is not getting compensated the same. So that's my only concern that I have with the numbers. The fact that we have an increase in the other employees in the department, okay, have gone up as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
If I may, Counselor? Sure. So Nick Romano is coming on to take a little bit more of a role than Alan had taken on. He's taking on more of a role as managing more of that department so that I can be a part of the other operations that are going to be going on over the course of the next year, not just the COVID, but bringing innovation across other departments in the city. So Nick is, I think, a terrific choice, and he's going to take on stability, and I think we're going to be really, really lucky to have his addition. Randy,
no doubts that he's going to be an added value to that department. I agree with you.
And then Mr. Mundestin is taking on the stipend because he's taking on drone operations. So I don't know if you've been made aware that we have a city drone. We've taken models across other cities around the state in particular to see how drones can be assistant. They've already played a major role in some of the culvert analysis that we've been able to do through the Water and Sewer Department to look at some of our water reservoir areas. They'll be helpful with ISD. So we're foreseeing tremendous drone operation opportunities, and that was where that stipend came from, to provide us the extra ability on top of his regular duties to basically manage the city's drone, which has been modeled in a few of the cities around the Commonwealth.
And that, you know, that's great. It's something that will be a valued asset to the community.
And will save money. It will save a tremendous amount of money.
My only concern here is that the increase in salaries are quite significant, and that's the only issue I have in the department. Honestly.
I understand.
They're in excess. They're in excess of 15%. On average, when you're looking at all three salaries or all four salaries, they're in excess of 15%. When look at this other budget, other departments aren't getting that, and that's my only concern I have with that. It's not personal, Ruben.
I'm not.
So please don't take it that way.
Counselor, I don't take it personally. I
have to. This budget's going to be public, and I need to make it aware that there is some numbers here that there are some inequities. Is the way I look at it. So. That's my only concern. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Counselor.
Are there any other counselors that have questions?
John Powers?
Yes. Councilor McKenna, Councilwoman McKenna. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ruben, I just want to say thank you because the last 3 months has made my job easier for all these calls that have been going into 311. So thank you very much. Your department is wonderful and helps, I know the ward counselors out very much. So I just want to commend you with that. And I know you've been doing extra hours, and we increased the 311 to later times. So I just want to say thank you. And
Appreciate that, Counselor. Thank you very much.
And Rich, can I ask you, can we get, this is for Rich?
I'm listening.
Okay, can we get the increases on all the chief, the new chief advisory, just the increase on all the salaries?
Yes.
Just a list on how much it's gonna, we're talking about?
Yeah, just so you know, I did, as part of the email that I spoke of a few minutes ago, I did have a sheet with all the employees' names and salaries, and that could be compared to last year's, but you're not the first council to ask me for that list, and I promise I will have it to you before the final budget meeting. Just gotta coordinate it and make sure it all ticks and ties. So, but you do have a list that I sent you today with everybody's name and salary. And just to remind everyone, a couple of years back when I started, I tried to take the names out of the main part of the budget because I've seen it politicized too much. But certainly you have the right to know who's who, and I put that in as a supplemental document to the budget.
So it will include all the promotions that people got too?
I made note of what you said, so I mean, it may be hard to tick and tie every single promotion. There's a lot of gyrations, but as far as all the chiefs and everything, I can certainly put that together, no problem.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other councilors? Just for a second, getting back to the drone situation. That's probably one of the most useful tools we have in the city right now. Years ago, if somebody would complain about a situation, somebody overbuilding in the yard or an area that was just filled with debris, you can't just, our inspectors cannot just walk onto properties uninvited. So this gives us an opportunity to put that drone, go over, take some pictures, and find out exactly what the situation is. It also comes in handy in places like our waterways, like the Eastern County Ditch. We just, Donnie Chamara, to his credit, is doing a great job down there cleaning that ditch. And having a drone, you want to look at something, great idea. It gives them an opportunity to go in there and find out exactly what blockages might be or anything else. So I support that drone 100%.
I agree, Chairman. If I may, Ruben, just I guess the increase in just to go back to the overtime is the increase. Can you explain a little bit on that increase, if you don't mind?
I think Rich and I have to talk about that. I'm not. So we did have an extensive amount of overtime, but most of that was related to COVID.
COVID-19.
I think that, I know that this has been a stressful time with low staff, but I think Rich and I can talk about that because I think that number might be higher than it needs to be. So
great. Thank you.
No, thank you for pointing it out.
Now, I believe that the next department, Section 2, page 24, Chief Financial Officer, Auditor, and Budget. Is that gentleman here tonight?
Right here.
I knew you were. And let me say one thing before we get into this too much. You do a great job. You've always, anytime I've come to you and asked for numbers, as I call you and I asked you for the list of employees and the salaries, you were right there, and you started putting it together. And I want to compliment you on the job you do up there. So,
thank you, Council. I appreciate it.
Okay, can we take your budget page?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay. The salary, base salary, other, I would assume part of that is educational.
Yeah, my budget, my salary is the same. I assumed the role as the finance director or chief financial officer back when George retired.
Yep.
This salary is my salary that I was hired at the city auditor for, but I didn't feel like it was a great time to try to ask for more money. So my salary is level. Well, I get a small increase, but my salary is as it were as the auditor and budget director. So no large increase there. The one adjustment that I have in my budget that I'm doing to try to help my organization is upping my budget analyst, Desunta, up to a assistant budget director. I have assistant auditor, assistant clerk, assistant treasurer, and she does a tremendous job. I didn't even know how great of a job she did until she went and had a baby on me and left me with this budget by myself. But
Very talented.
she's worth every penny. And furthermore, as we get into budgets down the road, you'll find that there's been some decreases in staff up in the planning community development department, and they have probably about 30-40 grants that they administer up there, and the lion's share of some of that administration is going to fall down on my department. So I am upping the responsibilities and hopefully the salary for her, and otherwise all the other salaries are per the contract. And again, with the pandemic and the times we're in, I thought I'd try to do my best to hold off a year on doing any kind of major overhauls to my budget as I grow into my new role here. So everything's pretty standard on the expense side. I mean, most of our expenses are just auditing services that we're required to do for the GFOA budget and for the federal guidelines with regard to us getting over $750,000 worth of federal funds. We're required to have an audit every year. So that's in my expenses. You'll see that those numbers are not much more. And again, we have a staff of 5. They work hard. They have a great staff, and no additions at this point. And happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, sir. I haven't heard from Steve Marabito, who's a member of the committee. Is Steve here this evening?
I am. My hand has been raised for an hour.
Well, I can't see your hand. I can't see your hand. Because
I was going by Mr. Chairman, I was going by the proper protocol. I was just raising my hand.
You certainly are, and I appreciate and respect that.
I was being a great subcommittee member. Mr. Biscay, who does our audit? Which company does our audit?
They're called, name of the firm is Powers and Sullivan.
Okay, Powers and Sullivan. So they're still going to continue doing the audit in 2021. Okay.
I believe we have a 3-year contract with them when I started, so I think this is the last year of that 3-year contract. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I have a quick question. I'm not sure. Pardon me if you already answered this, but does the budget take into account if there's a second wave of the corona, like in regard to revenue? Were they estimate? Was there a low estimate, or was it reasonable? Was the second wave of the coronavirus taken into account or no?
I mean, I don't know that a second wave of corona per se was taken into account. What we did is we just looked at historical averages on our local receipts and our state aid and applied some logic to where we thought we'd be with regard to the recovery and what we think the state will, conference committee between the House and Senate, what they come out with. There are rumors that they're going to loosen up some of the guidelines on the CARES Act, and maybe that will help keep local aid whole. So there's a million stories out there, and what we try to do is compile them all and try to come up with something that's as reasonable as possible with regard to putting a budget before you. I mean, we didn't want to get into a 1/12 budget. 1/12 budgets are based upon prior year spending, and it just forces you to come back anyhow. So if we're off on our estimates, we're going to have to come back. But if we did a 1/12 budget, we were going to have to come back anyway. So I thought it was worth it to try to put a complete package together. And
so a 1/12 budget would be months out versus the whole fiscal year, correct?
Yeah, you'd have to appropriate money every month for us until there's a budget approved. And I thought that was a lot of unnecessary work. I think that the process we went through in determining what we thought our revenues would be and then applying our expenses to that, I think are as reasonable as possible, and I'm sticking to it.
Now, our state and federal funds, will they be distributed later this year as opposed to a normal fiscal year?
I mean, some people don't think they're gonna have a budget till September, so I mean, I think they're gonna have to send out some money so people can operate, but we're all waiting the same as you. No one, there's not a whole lot of talk going on up there right now, but they're gonna have to come to some decision on how they may have to do a 1/12 budget at the state level to release those funds, but that doesn't really confront me as long as we get some portion to keep our operations going. We have plenty of money in the bank right now, and that we operationally wise, we're not going to be in a situation where we have to borrow revenue notes or anything like that. We'll be fine. But again, I just thought we'd do the budget process with our best guesses and reasonable estimates based upon history and polling fellow communities and friends and talking to my friends at DOR and at the state level, and again, just coming up with what we think is the most reasonable number to put forward.
And the budget is balanced as well, so.
The budget is balanced. Like I said, there's $1 million free cash balance in the budget right now, and if state aid comes out more favorably than we anticipate, we won't have to use that, and we'll have a truly balanced budget with no one-time revenue.
Excellent. Well, good job on giving us, submitting this in a timely manner. So I appreciate that.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Rich, point of information. You
Yes.
there?
I'm here.
Powers and Sullivan, it's no relation to this Powers.
No. All right.
I want to make that perfectly clear. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Certainly, go ahead.
I want to say thank you, Rich. Okay, again, in taking over 2 departments and having your hands full, and knowing that you're going in all different directions. Okay, the fact that you're able to the pay increase, like you said, you felt it wasn't the time to ask for that pay increase during the times. That's very thoughtful. I don't want that to go unnoted. I wish more would think the same way for the city, and I want to say thank you for that, and it means a lot. It really does. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate
the thoughtfulness in that.
And Richard, the rest of this is, these are all fixed, am I correct? The audit and accounting services.
I mean, the accounting services are fixed. We put a little money in there for special engagements. We try to find some areas that we can, drill down and do a little additional research on. So there is some money in there to, I'm hoping to do some fraud risk assessments just to make sure that, we're handling our cash properly, maybe do some spot audits on different departments and such. But for the most part, the majority of that money is fixed for our annual audit.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Now we're going to move on. Purchasing. Purchasing agent and assistant purchasing agent.
I think
No.
Michael's on
I
here.
just promoted Mr. Picardi to a panelist. He can speak.
Oh, okay. Michael. Can you hear me? Michael?
You out there, Michael?
Michael?
Is he muted?
Uh,
I just
Uh-huh.
unmuted him. Um, I'm clicking unmute, but maybe he's having an issue with audio.
Oh, hold on a second. Looky here.
Sorry about
Oh,
that.
great. Easy enough.
Microphone wasn't working.
Michael, congratulations.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you very much.
We're looking over your budget now, and you've been promoted from the assistant to the purchasing agent.
Yep.
Has the assistant's job been filled? I don't know.
Nope, I'm all by myself in there.
Okay, so.
Hasn't been posted yet.
Okay, so, and the next thing here, I see that you requested postage, 130,000, and the mayor cut that down 30,000.
Yeah, so that happened last year too. I usually just get reimbursed
Yep,
every quarter after there's a big mailing of like the water
Yeah.
sewer department.
yep. Okay, and basically that's it. Any questions on the purchasing agent salary?
Yep.
Or department?
If
Counselor?
if nobody has any question, I just have obviously, that's probably your biggest line item, obviously, right?
Yes.
Is there anything that, and I know it's being reduced, okay? But for some reason, I look at it, Michael, as and it's not your fault. What I'm trying to find out is there anything that we can do to reduce that number even more? It looks like 100,000, when you're looking at it and say $100,000 for postage, be a little bit excessive. I know it was increased. It's decreased from the past, but I look at that number as a big number. Is there anything that we can do to reduce?
So like the majority of the stuff we do already, like the big bills, like the tax bills, the water sewer bills, we do use a postage permits account. We've gone to like electronic certified mailing, so that like saves us $1.25 every time we send out a certified letter. And I am looking into, there's another piece of equipment that we can get to go on our current equipment that can actually reduce the regular postage even more. So right now, the regular postage for like everybody is 55 cents. We pay 50 cents through our account. And there's another little upgrade that we can make to make it go down even more. So
Yeah.
look into that too.
If I can add to it, we had Pitney Bowes in here looking at some of our equipment, and they said that they think there's a machine that we can put in play that uses the extra 4 digits that allows the bar code to be used, and it could reduce our postage. And we just haven't really had a chance to follow up with them with the pandemic. So we're gonna see if there's some equipment that'll allow us to, I guess, digitalize those zip codes that may drop that rate down.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Okay,
And I'll just say congratulations on the new position.
Thank you, Council.
Michael, thank you.
Thanks, John.
The,
Mr. Chairman,
the next department is the.
Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me?
So I had my hand raised here, but I'm following procedures, but doesn't seem to be working.
Tony, I respect that. See, I can't see your hand on my screen.
I don't know why. Okay, thank you. Michael, I just want to congratulate you. I've watched you for many years. I couldn't be happier with this in-house promotion because it's truly deserved. You're a first-class individual. You've performed admirably under some difficult conditions in the past, and I've appreciated it. And I am just very happy that you're in your new position. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, Council. I really, truly appreciate that. Thank you.
It's the truth, you know it.
Any other councilors? Okay,
Counselor Zambudo has his hand raised. Counselor Powers?
he just spoke.
I was
Council-
away from my desk.
Oh, Council Zambudo, we're all set? He spoke. The next department is the IT department. Okay, is he here this evening?
He's there. I see him.
Okay. Everything looks basically the same. There's a salary increase here for the assistant director, 5198. Did somebody explain that to me?
That's just his education, 7.5% on his education council.
Okay, fine. And now on page 2, page 33, section 2, okay? IT department. Contract and services. It's a reduction there of $49,000 at the, somebody explain that to me?
Sure, I can explain that. My name is George Bezos. I'm the new IT director for the city. I started on March 30th. So,
Welcome aboard.
yes, a very interesting time to start. Basically, the difference that you're seeing in that contracted services portion of the budget is that the city is moving. We have what are called managed service providers for IT.
Yeah.
And we're changing managed service providers. As part of that change, you're going to see, if you look through the detail of the contracted services pieces, you'll see that money is moving around a little bit in certain buckets. The bottom line is that reduction that you're looking at. And it's that change to a new managed service provider that is driving the majority of that.
Hello, Ashley?
Yes, John.
Oh, I can't hear anything. A fellow was speaking and,
It was probably your Wi-Fi, John. Sorry, Counselor.
okay. All right, any councilors have any questions?
John, Counselor
Yeah.
Powers, Jerry Visconti has his hand raised.
Jerry, go ahead.
George, I want to first say welcome to the city, and congratulations. I want, and you kind of broke up there, and I, when you were speaking, so I didn't get it all, and I just want to go through. If you scroll down to the support services, is this what you were talking about with this, with the line item being probably the biggest line item in your budget, the $530,000 line item for Thrive service contracts? Are you saying that the city is going to be changing managed service providers?
That's correct. So Thrive is the new, So Thrive is the new managed service provider.
Okay.
And previously, we were with a company called TOS. So the costs for the TOS service agreement for the upcoming fiscal year was approximately $630,000. So we went out to look at other competitive managed service providers and selected TOS. They're providing the similar services, in my opinion, at a much higher level of service, but the same similar base services as were being provided by TOS at a significant savings. So rather than $632, which would have been what it would have cost with TOS in FY21, that number will be $549. It's also important to note that that $549 figure does include one-time implementation costs. So we anticipate that that number will go down in fiscal 22 and fiscal 23 as we go forward.
Okay, so is it fair to assume? Oh well, let me ask you. Within that contract, within the Thrive contract, I assume, can we get a breakdown of what that $530,000 number consists of? It's just
Yeah.
a number that, I'd hate to approve something that I have no information on. So is it something that we can get our hands on?
Yes, we can get that.
Great, thank
And
you.
give you a breakdown of all the relevant services and what the cost is for each.
Fantastic, I appreciate that, thank you.
Any other councilors? Hearing none, we'll move on now to the next department, which is the assessors. That will be on section 2, page 36. And then the salaries on that are on page, section 2, page 37. Any counselors? Hello? Actually, are there any counselors that want to?
No, there isn't, John.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the numbers here. Total salary, 379, 833. There's $1,000 in here for overtime. There's an increase in the salary account of almost $40,000. Can somebody explain that to me?
I think the total increase is just over $10,000 as a whole.
I'm looking at the salary, 344, and then it's up to 379.
No, that's the base salary is
Yeah, well, that's,
344.
yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, and then it includes all the other educational incentives, travel allowance, longevity.
Okay. And then page 2, are we still, Patriot Properties, are they still doing, coming out, doing a full list and measure?
So this year for fiscal 21, it's an interim year adjustment. So we're under contract with them this year and next year for the interim year adjustment. And then fiscal 23 will be a revaluation.
So 23 will be doing the full list and measure.
Not a full list and measure. So we just completed that for fiscal 18. And we're required to do the full list and measure. It was every 9 years, but now that they went to 5-year revals, it's every 10 years.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing the full list and measure will be fiscal 28.
Okay. Any councilors have any questions with regard to the assessors?
Council Powers, if I may, I just,
Go ahead.
Dana, it's the salary increases are minimal, and they are they're okay with me. The reevaluation, is that the standard expense for that? Is that
Yeah, that's my contract. So we're under
That's your
contract.
contract?
Yeah, we did a 3-year contract with them. This is the 2nd year.
This is the 2nd year. Other than that, I have no problem. I have no questions. Thank you. Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome.
Councilor Zambudo has his hand raised.
Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Since I threw some bouquets at our new purchasing agent, I thought I'd throw some bouquets at our assessor. He's one of the most professional guys in City Hall, always right there when you have a question. And I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Counselor.
I agree more.
Okay. And next, we're going to take the engineering department. Sure. Engineering.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead. Engineering,
Yep, I'm here, Counselor.
okay, you have a, it's 275. Section 2, page 75. I know you've got a huge department down there. You know?
It is quite large.
Yeah. People falling over themselves, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me get to your page and we'll move on from there. Okay. Okay, contracted services. You were looking at for 128,600. What was the reason for that?
So that's broken into three categories. You can see the first one is on-call engineering and or street scan. So you have seen that we did some street scan.
Okay.
Some street scan evaluation of the pavement. We did a few years back, and we were looking to basically reevaluate after we had done, the last 3 years of paving. What also falls into that is some of the outside work that we look to be able to do. For example, over this past year, we're looking to do some drainage up on the Walnut Ave neighborhood down to Overlook Ave, and then also up in North Revere. There's a reconfiguration of Oak Tree Lane that we're looking to facilitate. So that's the type of work that falls into that sort of smaller, mostly survey related things. As far as the other two, the outfall sampling and the MS4 compliance, that component still exists. I believe it's just in a different part of the budget. It's still something that is necessary, as both of those are required tasks of the city. And then the last one is a stormwater educational collaborative that the city participates in with a bunch of neighboring communities that also helps to fulfill a lot of our new MS4 permit requirements with the EPA.
Let me ask a question on the office printer. That prints out the large
Yes.
blueprints and maps. Is that something that we own or we're leasing, or how is that?
No.
Work?
So it's a lease. We lease it. Previously, it was a 3-year lease. This year or this time, it's similar. It's we do it on a yearly basis, but it's similar. It's a lease that includes the plotter itself, and then also any of the materials needed for it. So it's a laser plotter. So there is toner and paper and things like that. And then it also includes any maintenance that has to happen. If there's something wrong with it, they come and fix it, that sort of thing. And it also doubles as a scanner, so I'm able to use it to scan, large format documents, and that includes a lot of the historical records that we have in City Hall that I had been trying, to digitize over time.
Yeah. How is that coming along?
So we're, it's delayed a little bit just over the last few months because we haven't had the ability to physically be in City Hall, and also obviously there are other more important things that we're trying to address, but it's coming along. I mean, it's a slow process because it's not something that I'm able to focus on a regular basis, but when I have help, sometimes I have a senior that helps me with that. I have had an intern in the past that has helped me with that. And then, just in general, myself and my current clerk, we try to, do as many as we can so that, over time we have it all in digital format. It's a slow process, but, we're making progress slowly.
Yeah, because I know, I've seen some of those papers, when outside the door there. They just, they've been, probably should have been done an awful long time ago. And
right.
They're just falling apart, and those are the papers that you really don't want to lose track of. So I think it's a good idea that we're doing that, and I'd like to see it move along faster if we can.
And appreciate your support. And, you know, I'd like to, you know, it's for us as well, you know, it makes it easier to conduct research and search our archives when we can look through it, you know, digitally, and we don't have to physically go and look through, you know, a stack of plans that we don't know what is contained within them.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fine with me. Anybody have any questions regarding this?
Chair, if I can speak for a moment? Again?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Good, Counselor. How are you?
I'm doing well. First, I want to know if your son is skating. Has he started skating yet?
Tonight.
All right, great. I have one question. You mentioned something about the outfall sampling is still in the budget, if I got that correctly, but it was just moved somewhere else. Is that correct? Or,
yeah.
If so, where is it gone? Or should I be asking Rich that question?
So I believe that is correct. I think Rich probably can clarify a little more, but it is a necessity. So I believe it has been moved to a different part of the budget. I think it falls now within our I&I fund, I think. Rich, if you can talk to that.
Correct. Yeah, we're gonna use the I&I fund that we have for when developers come in, they pay into that fund, and that's an appropriate use of those dollars. So we shifted those costs with the I&I fund.
Great, thank you.
I just have one question for you. The line going in from across North Shore Road, Vera and Alice, is that completed now?
Yes. So currently there is new water on Vera, there's new water on Alice, and there are 2 connections that go across North Shore Road on each of those streets. Okay,
and the next thing is what, jacking under the tracks?
Yep, so the next part of the water improvements up there would be a redundant feed under the railroad from Woodland Road, Glendale to Woodland Road, or vice versa. And that is one where we're in right now the process of addressing all of the permits that are required for that particular job.
When do you anticipate that'll be, starting?
So the earliest it'll be later this year, and that's going to depend very heavily on how the permitting process goes with a whole host of agencies, and that includes the EPA, that includes the railroad, that includes the electric company, and then it also includes the Army Corps and a lot of others. So it's going to depend on how quickly they are able to review our plans and get back to us,
All right, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
The solicitor's office. Hello.
I just promoted him to a panelist, Counselor Powers.
The solicitor's office?
Yes.
Okay, what page? These pages, that office is jumping ahead a little on the budget. You have that page in front of you?
Yes, that's 246, Chairman.
246, okay, so we have to go back, actually. Okay. Okay, Mr. Solicitor. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Looking at your budget. There's no, on the salary schedule, there's no change whatsoever.
That's what it's showing. That's correct.
That's probably not good news for you, right?
More for some of my staff than for me, but that would be correct as well.
Yeah, okay. And so let's go to, okay, release settlements. Okay, 2020, we had 25,000. You requested 50,000. The mayor said 25,000. What was the extra 25,000 requested for?
Was requested for just any unforeseeable settlements. That's been that sort of standard amount of money for a very long time. I thought it would be prudent to just have extra in there as a cushion, because as you know, and as I think all the councilors know, it's very difficult to predict what claims may or may not come into the city. And rather than run the risk of having to ask for some increase later, I thought it'd be advisable at the time to ask for the increase at that point.
Okay.
So that's why I asked for it.
Okay, outside legal services, we cut by 25,000, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And everything else looks pretty much the same.
That is also correct.
Okay, no increases. Well, I want to thank you very much for your service, and you do a great job up there.
Thank you, Councilor.
I've had occasion to come in there, and you've been very professional, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Powers, Counselor Zambuto has his hand raised.
Counselor Zambuto. Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had my hand raised by accident, but since I got a minute to speak here, I just want to thank Paul. He's been a professional for a long time. We've dealt on a lot of matters. We don't always agree, but always a true professional, and I appreciate that. And I'll be calling you soon because I never heard back on that other matter that we discussed.
Okay, you know where to reach me.
Never did that deposition. Still waiting for it.
Yeah.
Other than that, but again, I just want to thank you for your professionalism.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay.
Council
Election
Powers.
Department.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
can I just ask Mr. Capizzi just two questions, if I may?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Good, Jerry. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Just got a quick question on a couple things, and maybe Rich might be able to answer it as well. It looks as though the parking hearing officer is paid out of the meter receipts. Do we have a number? Is that a full-time, part-time position? And do we have a salary on that? Number one.
It's not a full-time position. Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a stipend position, and the reason why the appeals officer isn't part of the parking department or the ISD department is that you really shouldn't be appealing to the department that gives you the fine. So that sits well in the solicitor's office.
Okay. And Paul, if I may, just with the reduction in outside legal services and settlements, do you are there any pending cases that you foresee in the foreseeable future that you may be coming to us for an increase?
No, there are not at this time. I mean, my department will do the best to work within the parameters set by the administration. So if right now, foreseeably, no, I don't see anything that would cause concern today.
Great, thank you.
Right.
I'm
Now,
also the License Commission as well. I see they're on the list, which is just a couple of items. I don't know if Rich wants to take that or not, but.
yeah, we can do that.
It's the John Powers show. I'm just along for the ride.
Show. Show and tell. 165 we're looking for. The License Commission. Oh, hold on. 59, I think, 259.
City clerk.
No, we're gonna do that last.
Okay.
License Commission. Big salaries there. Unbelievable. Section 2, page 59. Are we all here? Any councilors want to ask questions on this? Hello? Ashley,
No counselors have their hand raised, John.
the salary schedule is $200 for 4 people, 3 people, 4 people, actually. But I don't see here is the secretary's salary.
She's in my budget.
It's coming out of the solicitor's office?
That's correct.
Okay, good. That explains that. Office supplies, $3,000. That's it. Total department budget, $6,200. Wow. Nobody has any questions on that. Okay, now.
Councilor Powers, just to interject, we skipped over the collector treasurer. That was before the city solicitor.
Before the solicitor, okay, yeah. Can I raise it? You know the reason I did that? Because I was looking in the past when George Anzoni was both. And, okay. Richard, you ready for this? Elected treasurer?
I'm ready, and I got Kathy on the line with us as well.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Another good employee.
Hi, councilors.
How are you, Kathy? How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Let me go back to the page and
While you're shuffling, I'd like to say that Kathy's doing a tremendous job. She has a lot on her plate. She's down a bunch of people, and she's doing great. So I really appreciate it.
she always did. An excellent job. Very congenial and a good worker. Elected treasurer. Okay. The salary schedule looks the same.
Actually, Council, just to make note for everybody, the treasurer collectors was one of the budgets that was hit with some of the budget cuts. We're down full-time, 2 full-time positions in that office, and we think we're gonna be okay. We're trying to incorporate some technology to help us with becoming more efficient, and the pandemic here is forcing us a bit to try to look at different ways to accept payments and process bills, et cetera. So, like I said, we're doing our best to keep our head above water. This is one department. It's tough to work mobile. I mean, we physically have to be here to operate and process payments. But Kathy's been great at that. She's been a trooper. But we are going to be down 2 positions in that office in fiscal year 2021. So we got our work cut out for us.
Kathy, if I may, I have a question. A woman called me this morning, and she apparently was delinquent in her excise taxes, and she went to register her car, and they said she had to get a release from the city. How does she go about doing that other than just paying it?
She needs to contact PKS Associates, that's the deputy collector.
Paul Kelly?
Yes, Paul Kelly's office, and they will take care of it for her.
Okay, and she pays them directly, right?
Right, she has to pay it directly to them, and then they'll release it.
And they're in Reading, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Kath, appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any
Counselor
councilors?
Powers, Counselor Visconti has his hand raised.
Counselor Visconti, go ahead.
Hi Kathy, how you doing?
Good, how are you, Counselor?
Good, good. Thank you for being here. I guess I just, if I can get some clarification in understanding of a couple of the line items. Contracted services, what is that? I know it doesn't look like it was, there was a line item in the previous budget, and you requested 100,000. The mayor was, and Mr. Viscay was nice enough to give you 85. And can you explain that to me, if you don't mind? Along with the banking, one other question to follow up with that. If we go down with the banking services of 325, can you just give a brief explanation of those two line items, if you don't mind?
The contracted services for all the armored car pickup we have various contracts that services for the Pitney Bowes. We're looking into lockbox.
Okay.
Service. And as far as banking services, a lot of that is between the service fees on all the banking on our various accounts that we have, plus the credit cards, we get service fees on those, all the use of the credit cards. So we have to cover all that.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may just to add in on that, yeah, on the contracted services, one of the things that we're gonna push forward with is trying to implement a lockbox service in the city. I've worked in a couple of larger cities and towns, and this is the only one that I've worked in that we process 100% of the bills in-house. Most cities and towns our size will utilize a third-party lockbox that matches up remittances and checks and forwards a file over every day for uploading. That's one of the reasons why we think we can become a little more efficient on staffing. So we're going to create an RFP and put that out to bid for fiscal year 2021. And with regard to the banking services, one of the things we did, what the mayor requested and we obliged, is that we waived all the fees for paying with your credit card, whether it's an ACH fee or a credit card transaction fee or convenience fee, as they call it. We're absorbing those now because quite frankly, we would try to encourage people to pay their taxes and excises so we don't have too big of a revenue shortfall. And you know, sometimes that's upwards of 3% of the cost of the payments. So we're monitoring the situation, but we're definitely trying to encourage people to pay online, get that money in the bank quicker, get it working for us, get the receivables down. But there is a cost associated with that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yep. The election department. Does anyone have any questions there?
Sir, I'd just like to comment on my staff that's been here since the pandemic started, actually since January 1st. They've been here every day, as have I. Since January, we've processed 1,424 voter registrations. That doesn't include change of name, change of address, change of party. We've been working on nomination papers and petitions for state candidates, and we're getting ready for the state election. We've just been doing so much. We had a part-time person, but that person actually left at 3 o'clock on election day, March 3rd. So things have been a little bit tough, but we're getting along. We're doing everything we need to do to keep going. And I just wanted to make sure that my staff's efforts haven't gone unnoticed.
No, I know. Anytime I've called there, you've always answered the phone, and I want you to know I appreciate that because I get a lot of calls from people. They want to know where they go to vote, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, sir.
You have to respond to them.
Yeah.
I have some questions, not, I mean, I'm looking at
No,
your
sure.
the salary schedule, with the exception, you know, of the office part of it, with the exception of the overtime for the DPW, which is necessary to deliver the ballots and the ballot boxes around the city. The board salaries, which is only $3,200. And there's money here for the custodial in the school department, because we do use their buildings and they have to have people there to, you know, to work. I'm looking, I'm looking over your budget, and the conversation we had yesterday with regard to the possibility, because
Sir,
will this affect your
Sir, I apologize, but you're cutting out and I can't really hear you.
close a polling place?
Yeah. Excuse me, Counselor Powers, you're going to have to repeat that, please. Your Wi-Fi cut out.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I couldn't really hear that.
Gotta go out, Jackie.
That will not be operational on primary day or even perhaps election day. How are you, what have you budgeted for that?
So Counselor, the majority of your question was cut off, but I do want to say one thing about the overtime for the custodians. We had 1 week of early voting, and during that time, they would have to come here in the morning at City Hall. We would have to load everything up, deliver it to the American Legion, and then reverse the process at the end of the night. So some of them end their day between 2 and 3 o'clock. So that's what the little bit of overtime was. And they would have to meet me here at 7 a.m. in the morning, as opposed to, I'm not sure what time their shift starts, but that's some of the overtime that you saw was the week of early voting in March for the presidential primary. As for the consolidating of polling locations, we have 4 custodians that are out now because they COVID-19. So there's only 2 custodians here in the building, and they don't generally assist with elections. So we're trying to consolidate because we also aren't going to be able to use the inmates for the setup of the polling locations. And a lot of the poll workers are afraid to work the elections. Today, as of today, we lost all the staff at the Jack Satter House. So we can neither have the elections at the Satter House, nor can we use the staff at the Satter House. Along with that, I was proposing to maybe have it at the Point of Pines Fire Station, and the rest of it, the rest of the other 4 precincts at the high school.
Well, I would say this to you. I would be agreeable to the Point of Pines Fire Station, and I would also be agreeable to the high school. I think the question out there is, what do you do with 5-2, 5-2A, and 5-1A? You know, there's 3 precincts there, so I think that's something we have to have a further discussion on.
And I'd be happy to have that discussion with you, but there are 3 options for all voters. They can vote early at St. Anthony's Church Bingo Hall. They are offering, pre-COVID, they didn't have early voting for September. They now have early voting for 5 days to include 5 hours on a Saturday, 5 hours on a Sunday. Now, so they can vote early at St. Anthony's, they can vote by mail, or they can vote in person. Anyone wanting an absentee ballot can call the office and I'll be happy to send it to them.
Now, let me ask you
Sure.
a question.
Sure.
If they want to vote early,
John, I'm so sorry, but your connection keeps getting lost and I can't hear the question. You said if they want to vote early, if they want to, they can vote early by mail. I can send, well, so they can vote early at the St. Anthony's Church. They can cast an absentee ballot or they can vote in person.
Okay, so I
On
can,
election
vote-
day.
if I live in the St. George or the Satter House, I can vote on election day at St. Anthony's?
No, you can vote on election day at Revere High School, or you can vote between, wait a minute. Early voting in September is the week of August 24th to the 28th, and there's a Saturday and Sunday in between for 5 hours. It starts off 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday, and then it goes normal business hours for the rest of the week. And that's at St. Anthony's Bingo Hall for September.
Okay, well, I think this is a conversation we have to have after the budget. And
I would be happy to have that, sir, but it's really getting very late. If you have any time and you want to get together with the Committee on Elections, I'd be happy to do that because we have to notify some 26,000 voters by postcard as per Massachusetts general law, and it's really getting late that we have to do that. So
Well,
please,
aren't we still waiting to see what the Commonwealth, that Secretary Galvin is going to do?
no, our consolidating polling locations is separate from, consolidating polling locations is separate from the proposed changes that the Secretary of State's office. We are still waiting for changes to become final, but consolidating polling locations is a separate issue. And we really need to keep that going because it is getting very late in the season.
Well, what we can have another conversation, but it's just people traveling from the boulevard all the way up to the high school, given the traffic pattern in this city, between 4 and 6 or 7 o'clock at night. That's a task, and I want to see if we can.
Okay, but those people can vote. Those people can vote early at St. Anthony's Church, or they can vote absentee by mail. They don't even have to go visit the polling place. They can just cast an absentee ballot.
Okay, are we going to send applications for absentee ballots to these people?
We have anyone, they have to request it. I can't just randomly send it. Now, I heard that the Secretary of State's office, this was proposed legislation, that they may be sending to every voter in the Commonwealth an absentee ballot application or a mail-in. I don't think they'll call it absentee. I think they'll call it a mail application. But again, I haven't heard back from them.
Well,
but that is separate from consolidating polling locations.
Well, let's see what we can find out on that. And
We just have to wait until they tell us.
Okay. All right. Now, you've got $80,000 in here for poll workers. And you say that you can't get poll workers. So what do we get that $80,000 in there for?
Well, that 80,000 is going to cover, like I said, early voting. It's 13 days in November to include 2 Saturdays, 2 Sundays for 5 hours each. And then it's going to cover 2 election days.
Okay.
And I still haven't heard from a lot of the poll workers. So that number should be the number of, I think, 59 I said that I heard from so far. That should increase that. But see, consolidating the polling locations, everyone can work in a more team environment. Yeah. Instead of having, everyone in their separate little section, they can all work together. They can cover each other's shifts. They can cut, it's going to be a little bit easier. Plus the setup and breakdown would be easier as well. Yeah. We're not going to be able to use the inmates. We don't have any custodians, and we're going to have probably just enough poll workers.
I just don't want to see after this epidemic is over, a pattern of closing polling places, because I think the most fundamental thing that a person can do in this city is get out and vote on election day.
Sir, we're not closing polling locations. We're trying to keep the voters and the poll workers safe. Safety is the #1 issue. It is not. The voters now have three
Diane,
options to cast
I
a ballot.
understand.
I'm not
what you-
closing
Point
polling
of order,
locations, I'm
Mr. Chairman,
consolidating
point of
them.
order. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can we go back to regular business? Discussing the budget?
We'll do that. I just want to make a point here.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Powers, Counselor Visconti has his hand raised,
Oh,
as
I'm
well
sorry.
as,
Go ahead, Councilor.
Actually, that was a mistake, but I want to, since you've mentioned me, I'll just say to Diane, thank you for everything you're doing
Thank you, sir.
in going through these difficult times and what we have to do to give the voters an opportunity to vote. So thank you, but
Thank you, sir.
mistake.
So your 2020 budget, as far as expenses, are basically the same as your
Yes,
2021. Am I
Yes.
correct? Okay.
yes.
And the only difference is a reduction of $40,000 on the payroll accounts. So I don't have any questions on this unless somebody else does. Anybody else have any questions? Hello?
there's no other questions, John.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay. We did the licensing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
Conservation Commission.
I don't see anyone here from Conservation, Counselor Powers, but it's,
Well, there's not that much on,
John, that generally falls under my purview. Bob O'Brien, I can answer any questions with regard to the budget.
Please do that.
The budget is unchanged from last year. It is only for the members of the commission, including the chairman, $6,400. I think they have minimal expenses, essentially unchanged. They meet monthly and have had approximately the same number of transactions in the current year as they have had in the previous years. So there's not a great deal to
The
discuss.
total payroll is $6,400. I mean, and that's.
Correct. It's very comparable to the licensing commission in
Yeah,
that
that's
regard,
for-
and the planning board for that
people.
matter.
That's for 7 people, so I don't. Okay, Zoning Board of Appeals, anybody there from the Zoning Board of Appeals?
I'm speaking on behalf of the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's the
Okay.
same as it was last year, Counselor Powers.
Yep.
Let me see.
Okay, then let's leave that alone. Now, the next one is Office of Strategic Planning and Economic Development, Mr. O'Brien.
Councilor Powers.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Let me give you a brief overview then. We have had a fairly significant reduction in our budget, in part due to the reorganization of the DPW, which is now taking responsibility for streets and sidewalks, for which we were previously responsible in our department. And in part because of COVID-related austerity measures. With regard to the reorganization, the budget for Michael Kessman has now been transferred to the Department of Public Works. And I am working with Don Chiaramella to assure a transition of those responsibilities from our department to DPW as of the first of the year. On the austerity side, we have lost 2 of our so-called 960 positions. Those are the semi-retired individuals, one of whom worked closely with Michael on streets and sidewalks, and that is John Squibb.
Yeah.
John is temporarily on furlough. I don't think we know the length of the furlough. It will depend on the progress throughout the fiscal year. But in addition to John, we have also had furloughed Bill Ash. Rich had earlier referred to the number of contracts that we have in our department. I think it numbers in the about $10 million annually. Bill was responsible for those contracts, and we will now have to work much more closely, as Rich has indicated, with the auditing department to transition those responsibilities as of July 1. As you well know, everyone on this phone call, both Bill Ash and John Squibb were employed by the city for more than 40 years. So my department is going to be considerably different without them. And I think the city as well, until they can be restored once the furloughs are completed. But in the meantime, we are working with our fellow departments to reflect as much as possible the picking up the slack on their responsibilities. We also had one other staff position that was scheduled to be moving to ISD that has also been taken out of our department.
Okay.
So as a result, our overall budget is down something close to 20%, I should say.
Yeah.
Many of our employees, as you know, are funded from outside income. The city appropriations in the past year, the current year, covered 3 staff positions. Going into the next fiscal year, the city appropriations will only cover 2 of those positions. The third being Frank Stringy, who will now be transferred from the city appropriations to outside income. We also had plans to increase emphasis in 2 areas in which the department is getting increasingly involved. One is transportation coordination. The city does not have a transportation department, as you know, so our department has been handling most of those matters, both with regard to public roadways, the Department of Transportation, as well as public transportation, the MBTA, DCR, and others. So we will continue that effort, and the person that has been handling that for us to date has been Julie DeMauro, very effectively, I might say. Julie, as of the first of the year, will be more formally transferring into our department. The salary that you see for Julie is essentially the salary that she has been earning to date, and we hope to increase her to a more equitable salary position as additional funds permit. So the net effect is we have a fairly significant reduction in our budget, but we do have a continuation of all of the activities that we have been involved in. Most of the development activities, notwithstanding the COVID emergency, as you know, have been proceeding. With the exception of hotel construction, all of our construction activities have continued. Suffolk Downs and waterfront construction, all continuing. The one area that we had hoped to provide additional attention to was workforce development. It has become clear to all of us that as we've continued our economic development, our workforce development, that is to say, keeping up with Revere residents' ability to fill those jobs has been somewhat lagging. We were hoping to have a new workforce development coordinator. Unfortunately, we have had to defer that due to the COVID emergency. So the net basis is we will continue to do what we have been doing. Some of what we have been doing will be transferred to other departments, but we hope not to skip a beat. And on the transportation side in particular, we will be more formally dedicated to that effort. I can answer any questions you may have for me.
No, I don't have it. I just have a comment. First of all, I want to thank you for being so generous, with your time to travel with me up to Wilmington when we worked to get Wonderland torn down. And I want to thank you for many other things where you've been so helpful in getting things organized and getting things helpful. Frank Stringy is staying on. I'm just Bob?
Frank indeed is staying on. The fact is we couldn't live without Frank. He is our chief planner. He's the head of the site plan review committee. He's our zoning guru, coordinates the planning board, and there was no circumstance that would allow for us to consider proceeding without Frank. We are very fortunate that he came through a recent illness and is back to work. So everybody's very happy about that. But Frank will continue on in his role.
Frank has a wealth of experience in development in the city, and I'm just so happy to hear that. And
Yeah, I must say, you know, between Frank, Bill, and John, there was over a century of experience. We're fortunate to keep Frank without interruption, and hopefully we will have Bill and John back in the foreseeable future.
and I'm glad to hear that Julie tomorrow is coming up there. She's great job. She lives and breathes the city of Revere as far as her work ethic is concerned.
No question about that.
Great job, and I just hope she'll be compensated accordingly. That's it as far as I'm concerned.
Counselor Powers, Counselor Visconti has his hand raised.
Counselor Visconti.
Yes. Good afternoon, Bob.
Hey, Jerry, how are you, Counselor?
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I guess there's just the one line item. Well, a couple things. I know you touched on the other sources. Can you just go a little bit more into detail of what those other sources are? So I can understand that a little better.
Yes.
And then if you can help me understand, I guess there was correct me if I'm wrong, it looks as though there's a created position, deputy director, which looks to be something that wasn't in last year's budget. Can you help me understand that as well?
Yes, I'd be glad to. With regard to the second point, the person that is filling the role of deputy director as of July 1 has been with the department for some years, is transitioning into this new deputy role. I'm 77 years of age. I plan a year at a time. So clearly we have to have leadership transitions in the department in mind, and that certainly reflects that. Tech has done a wonderful job on a number of fronts, and so we're planning ahead with regard to that position and compensating her accordingly. But she has been with the department. In a sense, the city planner role is being phased out, the deputy director role is being created. So it's really the same person transitioning into a new leadership role. With regard to our outside sources of income, I can run them down for you quickly. They include the Community Development Block Grant, which in this year, because of the additional CARES funding, has approached $2 million. We have a variety of transportation planning grants through the Mass Gaming Commission, close to $1 million. We have the Broadway Signalization Project, Child Safety Program, in-grid reimbursement programs, again, a couple of $1 million there. We've got the Mass Works grant for the Revere Beach Parkway, Shirley Avenue, and Ocean Avenue projects in the current year, a couple of $1 million there. We have a variety of grants for park programs, usually about $1 million a year. In this case, they were considerably higher because Revere is handling the budget for the Northern Strand Trail, a multi-municipality effort, which is $13 million. That's relatively unusual. We then have a variety of resiliency programs, energy conservation, hazardous waste, municipal vulnerability preparedness. There are something in excess of $600,000. And then we have other grants related to waterfront square development from the private development there. So as Rich indicated, I think there are a total of about 30 in number, and Bill used to administer them in close cooperation with the auditing department. And now I hope we're going to have Assunta as the point person on that, Rich, if we can, or somebody from your department to pick up that slack.
Well, yeah, I envision we'd have some kind of shared kind of duties, but just to elaborate a little bit on that, Counselor, in the past, a lot of the grants that we receive come with the administration portion of them. So let's just say, for example, you got $100,000 grant. Sometimes you can use 10 to 20% of that for administration. And in the past, we try to put all that money towards programming, but as we feel the budget squeeze here, we're going to start using those administration dollars to offset costs of salaries. So hopefully it'll swing back the other way. But for example, Northern Strand came with about $150,000 worth of administration dollars that we can stretch over several years. So we're using some of those dollars, and CDBG comes with administration dollars, and many of the grants that we get actually allow for administration costs to come with it. So it's a work in progress, but we certainly can't leave those on the table for just programming anymore. So we're going to try to have a balance there between programming and admin. So,
and I might just note, Rich, in that regard, we have used some of those administrative fees to cover salaries within our department. One of the challenges is many of them do not come with any administration. So when you get, $1 million for transportation planning on Route 1 or for parks, they do not pay for the costs to administer those programs, which can be quite considerable. And that's in fact what the staff of our department does.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome,
Counselor Powers, resident Eric Lambadecchio has his hand raised.
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, thank you again. Just a couple of questions. You'd mentioned the MVP program getting about $600,000. Is there any update on a next meeting on that? I know there was a meeting about a year ago down the Point of Pines Yacht Club, and we had a good turnout. I'm really hoping to see some flood mitigation down there in the Point of Pines, and I'm just curious if there's anything on the docket in the next year or two to get those folks some relief down there.
Yes, Eric, there is. You may recall that the initial series of meetings that you referred to and were in attendance at had to do with the initial feasibility study in anticipation of some additional funding. We have just submitted for that additional funding. I think it was actually this month or last month, and we are expecting that will be forthcoming. I don't know the exact amount right off the top of my head, Eric, but it will be significant, and it will be focused primarily on the Point of Pines and Riverside areas. We also were successful in getting into the environmental bond bill a significant amount of money for seawall improvements, particularly in the Winthrop Parkway area. So the MVP is by no means the only source of funding for resiliency preparedness, but following up on that particular series of programs, we do expect we will have some money forthcoming as of July 1.
Great news, Bob. Thank you. And just one other question on an item you and I had touched base on a while back. I heard you mention some money, if it was from the state or DCR. Is there any update on reconfiguring the traffic pattern at Revere Street along Revere Beach Boulevard? I know a while back there was some conversation that the city had submitted recommendations to the state, and I just didn't know if you had any funding for that or if there's an update on that item.
Well, the good news on that is that actually last year we had submitted a MassWorks proposal to the Commonwealth that would have allowed us to begin the work at the northern end of Ocean Avenue. As it turned out, that was not funded, but we did engage in a conversation with DCR about the need for reconfiguration of the Revere Street, Ocean Avenue, and Boulevard intersection, that kind of extended intersection, as well as Ocean Avenue itself and the Boulevard, particularly with regard to needed drainage improvements and so forth. So they are now committing to invest a considerable amount of their capital budget. I think they're talking on the order of $10 million, which will be done in conjunction with our efforts in MassWorks to improve that. I think they are generally on board about recommendations for improvement, and they are now, I think, committed, particularly with the new commissioner, and particularly now that the DCR maintenance facility is completed, to spending some real money to get that done. It probably will not be in the next fiscal year, only because the design challenge there is a significant one, but I think there's general agreement that that needs to be fixed, and a general consensus that it will be. That will also apply to the southern end around Elliott Circle, where we are now working with them with another MassWorks grant to improve that whole intersection, both at Ocean Avenue and at the Boulevard. So there's hope on the horizon, Eric.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
There's no other speakers, Councilor Powers?
Not that I know of. It's hard because for some reason, the photos are not coming up on this screen. I don't know what that reason is, but I'd like to, if we can now, get to the city clerk's budget.
Sure. Councilor Powers, thank you. Obviously, due to some budget cuts, my office supplies account was reduced by $3,750. I did put in a request for a legal review and republication of the city ordinances for $21,000. I'm going to put that on hold due to COVID and the general budget constraints that the city is facing. So I might put that in. I will put that in for next year. If you look at my salaries budget, it was reduced by 20 hours for one position. There was 2 admin assistants. One was full-time, one was part-time. I did have a full-time person retire. So now the part-time administrative assistant, maybe we'll be looking at increasing her hours come the fall.
Actually, just so you know, that was one of the budgets that I sent an updated salary sheet to on today's email. So in case anyone was wondering.
Right now, with the cut in the hourly cut that happened to my office, it's going to be okay during this time period where the city hall is still closed to the general public. But if we ever do open up, I would like to see that position be put back in maybe next year's budget.
Well, I would too, because I think it's so important what you were doing in there to get all of those old records, for lack of a better word, onto discs or drives or thumb drives, or however you would do it. I'd like to see that continue. It's a vital part of our community. And people come in every day and they're looking for a record of this, not particularly even the building department, and they don't really have what they should have, I don't think. And that's nobody's fault currently, but that's in the past. And I'd like to see that updated as much as possible. Okay? Any other questions?
Councilor Janino has her hand raised.
Councilor Janino, you're awful quiet.
I'm observing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to speak quickly on this one. We're very lucky to have such a great clerk, and Ashley, you do a great job. And I know that it's going to be challenging with the cuts that you're faced with this year, but I know that you're going to be able to continue to do what you do and serve the people as well as you do. And I hope you have the support of definitely me, and I'm sure the rest of the council when it comes to making sure those positions are filled when things go back to normal. So thank you for everything you do, and I look forward to seeing what this year brings for us.
Thank you. Councilor Visconti and Councilor McKenna both have their hands raised.
Go ahead, Councilor McKenna. I can defer to you first. You're muted, though.
You're muted, Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Councilor Visconti. I just want to say that with the extra people that you had, extra employees, that you gave the council more time, and you were always there for us. And I think before, when I first got on, you didn't have the employees, and you, you had a lot of responsibility, and I really do feel that with, more people there, you'll give the attention to the council, because we definitely need attention, you know what I'm saying? And you do a lot of work for us. You take the motions, you help us write them, you make sure everything's copied and we get our agendas. So, I mean, there's more to your job than everybody knows, except for the council. So I just want to thank you, and I hope, you get the people that you deserve in your office, and you can go back to business after the COVID virus is done. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Councilor McKenna.
Ashley, if I may, I want to publicly thank you for not only the work you do in there and your staff does in there, but the condition of the office, how it's improved dramatically over the past year or so. It's a pleasant place to walk into, and it's a pleasant place, I'm sure, to work in. And that all goes through yourself, who went out, organized it, got this and got that, and put it all together. And as a result, it's just a great place now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
Ashley, I want to say I echo those same sentiments, and I'm in looking at your schedule of employees, it looks as though not only have you lost a person, but you've also unfortunately been decreased in part-time salaries. Okay, and that's unfortunate. So I assume that it looks as though you've been your department has been hit significantly with this lean budget, so to speak. And I want to publicly say thank you as well. I know as a new city councilor, I reach out to you a lot more probably than most of the others. Maybe, I don't know, but I feel as though I can count on you for the correct response, the correct answer, I should say. And
anytime, Councilor.
I ask you, it's going to be probably, more or less, it's going to be 100% correct. So I want to thank you for that. Your response, when I'm sending emails, I get a response with very quick, and that's important. So I want to publicly say thank you for everything.
Thank you. Councilor Powers, there's one resident with his hand raised, Eric Lampendecchio.
Certainly. Hello.
Eric Lampendecchio, 43 Tapley Ave. I just want to say thank you, Ashley, as well. You've been a great resource, and you're very responsive and always accurate. I've gotten some feedback. A relative of mine is a city clerk at a nearby city, and his feedback was Ashley is the bar for city clerks in the state of Massachusetts. So I hope that you are compensated as such as we discuss the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. But again, I just want to reiterate, with that budget cut to the salary line that we did have, I would like to see that in the budget for next year when we open up to the public. We would definitely need that extra body in here when we do open up to the public. But we can manage for now.
Okay. For the evening, signed aye.
Thank you.
All right.